My name is Dr. Stephen Hansen. My passion is animals, more specifically, the health and welfare of our companion animals and their interaction with society. It's all about the human-animal bond. I love solving problems. I love solving problems that require an entire community to come together to find a solution, in which community members have to ask, how can I be part of the solution? That problem in 2013 was the seemingly endless flow of companion animals into Maricopa County shelters. Tens of thousands of animals for decades, with less than half making it out alive. Less than half making it out alive. So I'd like to take you on a journey. Close your eyes and see, smell, and hear what comes to mind as I describe a traditional animal shelter. This is a shelter that could be operating in our community today or in hundreds of other communities at this very minute across the country. So imagine that you get into your car. You drive across town to a neighborhood that you probably would not visit for any other reason. You walk into the kennel building. A rusty metal door behind you slams. The lights are dim. The dog barking is so loud it's almost deafening. As you walk down the seemingly endless row of chain-link rusty kennels, you realize the floor is moist and wet, the air is heavy, and you smell an odor, as a cleaning crew is doing their level best to take care of these animals in this situation. You continue walking, and you stop by a kennel, and you look down, and there's an adult boxer laying there on a towel, and he raises his head and he looks up at you. He's got a tumor the size of a grapefruit hanging from the side of his neck. You get a pit in your stomach. You continue walking on. A few kennels down, you stop, and you do the same thing again, and you take a look, and there's a German Shepherd there, a rather handsome German Shepherd. The German Shepherd sits up, takes a look at you, and you realize his eyes are glassed over. He's blind. He's trying to figure out what's happened to him by listening to the incessant barking going on around him. Now you're really not feeling very good. You continue walking until you find a group of cats. In this kennel, you see a litter of kittens that were pulled from a dumpster the day before. This has been quite a visit for you. You realize that the animals here are lost, lonely, confused, and scared. They don't know what's next for them. Okay, so how many of you, when you imagine this scenario, this traditional shelter that's opened by the hundreds across the country today, wish that you could rescue every animal in this situation? Most of you probably. At least half of you have got pets at home. And those that have pets at home probably have more than one. So you understand the human-animal bond. Well, in 2012, national shelter estimates put intake at animal shelters at about 8 million animals in 2012, with less than half making it out alive. Very similar to Maricopa County. Less than half living under those conditions, not making it out alive. So I'm here today to tell you that there is a groundswell of change across the animal welfare industry. Progressive shelters across the country who are willing to ask the question, how can I do something different? How can I do the right thing for these animals? What is it going to take to change? And a community that comes together and says, what can we do to help? These progressive shelters are experiencing plummeting euthanasia numbers. So now I'd like to take you on a different journey. In this journey, you enter the shelter of the future. This is a progressive animal shelter in which everything that happens in this shelter is where you can see it. Nothing happens behind closed doors. A journey through this shelter results in happy tales. As you walk in, you look across, and you see a cat community room. And you walk over and you watch cats lazily taking it easy for the day. These cats are being watched after in a very, very friendly social manner, and they will be adopted by the end of the day. You continue walking, and you look in another glassed-in area, and you see a nursery. In this nursery, there are volunteers and staff members who are working like clockwork, in an assembly line fashion, feeding bottle baby kittens every 2 hours, 24/7. The kittens in this nursery will be adopted. Our traditional shelter does not have the resources to save these kittens, and they would all be euthanized. As you're standing there taking this all in, you look outside, and you see a green play yard and what might have been in the past a rusty chain link fence, but instead, these are a group of dogs from a hoarding case. These dogs originally were withdrawn. They didn't know how to deal with people, and they didn't know how to deal well with other dogs. But there's a professional team of behaviorists who are working with these dogs to not look after just their daily needs, but their welfare, which is much more important. These dogs will be socialized with other dogs and with people. Unlike the dogs in our traditional shelter who will break with kennel stress, which is what happens when incessant barking causes a dog to withdraw. That dog becomes almost impossible to adopt. These dogs will find homes. They will be rehabilitated by this amazing behavior team that was willing to challenge how we could actually manage dogs that were not 100% perfect to start with. So now you're getting a little bit excited. You continue on in this shelter, and you come across another glassed-in area. This is the surgical suite area. Miracles here do not happen behind closed doors. Large and small miracles happen every day as veterinarians in the community challenge what they thought they knew about animal shelters. As you're standing there, a group of school kids come up. This is a field trip for the community. They're training veterinarians on the techniques of high-volume spay and neuter. It's a teaching hospital. As you're standing there, you hear commotion behind you, and you turn around, and you see a boxer. This is a boxer that we imagined in our traditional shelter. This boxer has been saved by these veterinarians in this shelter of the future, this progressive shelter. His tumor was removed. He spent 2 weeks in a foster home while his wounds were healing, getting better socialized and coming out of his shell. He was adopted. You notice that he's dragging his person behind him, moving quickly from the adoption area, making a beeline to the door. He knows he has hit the jackpot. His life has changed forever. And that German Shepherd that we talked about, well, his name is Brian. Brian was adopted. It took one person to change Brian's life. Brian was not going to be an easy dog, but you can imagine all he had to do was learn where the furniture was. So that first week was probably pretty exciting as he's running into everything. But he's become a wonderful, wonderful dog. So everything changes when a community comes together and asks how they can be part of the solution. You might ask, is this actually a dream? The reality is that there are progressive shelters around the country that have made an enormous difference in the lives of animals in their community. For example, San Francisco is probably the safest place in the country to be a homeless pet. The San Francisco Humane Society provides 2 veterinary hospitals that provided 85,000 physical exams to animals, to people that don't have a lot of money to pay for their care. The Humane Alliance in Asheville, North Carolina is a teaching hospital for veterinarians to learn spay and neuter techniques so that they can go out into other shelters and help ensure that these populations are kept under control. And then, one of my favorites, San Diego. The San Diego Humane Society runs one of the best kitten nurseries in the world. They treated 4,000 kittens last year, and they were all adopted. So this shelter of the future is a shelter that ends in happy tales. So my commitment to animal welfare started when I was very young. As you can imagine, you're probably not surprised, I had just about every type of pet that you could imagine, but mostly we had dogs. So I want to tell you a story about a dog of mine named Brandy. I was a teenager. I lived in the Midwest. I used to let Brandy out to go to the bathroom at night before I went to bed. Small town, Midwest, she wandered the neighborhood. I would never admit that. I guess I just did. I would never recommend that, but that's what I used to do. So one bitter cold Midwestern night, I let her out back to go to the bathroom, as I always did, as I had done many, many times before and many, many times thereafter. I came back a few minutes later expecting to find her at the back door because it was bitter cold. And she's usually there waiting to get back in. Well, she's not there. I call her and she doesn't come. And I hear a dog barking up the street. So you can imagine as a teenager, my first response was, there's no way that's my dog. So I close the door and I come back a few minutes later and she's still not there. This is not normal. And I hear another dog barking. So I bundle up, I trudge up the street. As I'm walking up the street, I see, yes, Brandy, barking at a figure standing by a mailbox at the curb. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what has my dog done now? I could tell you stories about this dog. So I walk up, and Brandy stops barking, and I realize that she is sitting next to an elderly neighbor of ours, a very old woman that had lived up the street that honestly I had never talked to. No surprise as a teenager. So she tells me she had forgotten to get her mail, and it was bedtime, and she decided to get her mail. She walked down her steep driveway in her robe late at night and was afraid to go back up the driveway. So she was just standing there. So Brandy and I walked her up into the house where she was safe, parted ways, and we went about our business. So fast forward 2013, I'm a veterinarian. I'm a unique veterinarian. I also have an MBA. I'm one of 45 veterinarians in the world who are board certified by the American College of Animal Welfare. In 2013, I left New York City after 16 years with the ASPCA, moved across the country to Phoenix, Arizona. Why, you might ask, would you leave New York City and go to Phoenix, Arizona, besides the fact it's beautiful here? The reason was, in 2013, Maricopa County was considered one of the worst places in the country to be a homeless pet. One of the worst places in the country to be a homeless pet. I had to find out for myself. Well, I can tell you that it was. Fast forward 3.5 years later, after embracing with a community, after a massive amount of change, after turning the ship upside down instead of turning it around, I can tell you that just like progressive communities like San Francisco, Asheville, North Carolina, and San Diego, we were able to change the paradigm for animals in our shelter. When a community comes together and says, how can I make a difference? We're able to reduce euthanasia by 84%. 84%. All it takes is somebody willing to question the status quo, willing to decide that the shelter of the past is not acceptable for the future. When a community is willing to ask, what can I do to help? Just like the dog that we removed the tumor, Gus, well, Gus had a foster that took him home for 2 weeks while his wounds healed. One of the most important things that a community can do nowadays is help their shelters by fostering sick animals. It's a short period of time. They will be adopted. The animal shelter of the past, the animal shelter that you've all visited, the animal shelter that is open at this very minute by the hundreds across the country, is rapidly becoming obsolete. And what's to come is truly magical. Thank you.